welcome. And thank you for making the choice to invest the next 45 minutes, hopefully 60 minutes with us, managing our emails better, the social platforms, etc. And my challenge to you is, if you haven't already shut everything else down so that we have your total focus, can I ask you to do that? Turn the phones off, turn off your emails, etc. Because we have some rich content to be able to share with you, some tips, tools, and ideas that you can plug into your real world today. Yes, and Richard, I am expecting you to have your inbox at 0 by the end of the day, etc. So I'll take you up on that one. And I have my wonderful assistant here, Bob, who's hopefully going to help us to manage the technology.
I'll do my best, Jim.
And if you haven't already changed the setting so that all of the participants can see what's happening here, that would be really great as well. If by chance I reference a tool, a resource, a book or something, and you want to say, oh, I need a bit of that, put it in the chat, and Bob and I, as a follow-on, will make sure that you get all of the help and assistance that you can going forward. So again, thank you for your time, energy, and attention, and make sure that you get great value from this. Quick question for everybody, and share with me in some way, shape, or form. Have you, do you like donuts? So give us a thumbs up in the chat box, or however you can do that. What have we got? Not me. Okay. Well, it might not be your addiction.
Yes, yummy, of course.
Okay.
No, yep, certainly do.
Krispy Kremes. I don't know if any of you come across Krispy Kremes. But so let's get rid of that. Excellent. Okay. So imagine the first thing you did in the morning was wake up and eat your donut. And then later on, you actually have breakfast, donuts for breakfast. And then during the day, every 10 or 15 minutes, just one bite, one bite, one bite. And of course, that doesn't matter, does it? Because it's only just one bite. But by the end of the day, you're full of sugar, bad carbs, and you're all a bit woozy. But just before you hit your pillow, you take another little bite. Now, I know none of you would ever do that. But our food addictions, much like our digital addictions, are a bit out of control, a bit out of whack. And the problem being is, particularly with not only the food that we ingest, high sugar, bad carbs, etc., not nutritious for us, not enhancing our performance, our brain power. This technology can be a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. Now, I don't know if any of you can relate to the picture on the screen here, where this addiction, and it's not all our fault. It's not all our fault. A couple of years ago, I was over in California, Silicon Valley, talking to a guy there, and he used to ask some of the senior leaders in some of these high-tech companies, do you allow your young children to have the latest apps, the latest iPhone, the latest laptop, iPad? And most of them said, no way, Jose. Interesting insight in terms of how, and during lockdown, don't get me wrong, it's been a blessing and a boon as a grandparent, being able to at least, you know, FaceTime and Skype, etc., with the grandkids and with the children all over the place. It's been a great blessing. I think, you know, the pandemic, we would have been in a different situation at a business level, at an organization, at a team, at the family level, without the technology. So I'm not down on the technology, but it's the abuse, it's the over-reliance. And Carl Newport, in that great book, he said, we need a new diet, because it's actually affecting our brain, our performance. If we overdose and get addicted 24/7, 365, always on, high stress situations, it's affecting performance of us as individuals. And so a couple of things in terms of diet. The only thing that I can tell you about physical diet regime is stay away from cottage cheese. Stay away from cottage cheese. Now, this isn't scientific, this is my own observation. Only big people eat cottage cheese. It must be the most fattening food in existence. So stay away from cottage cheese. No, seriously. But in terms of how many diets does it take to lose weight? One that you stick to. And I'm going to challenge you in terms of, so are the systems, the protocols, the habits that you have in terms of your digital environment helping or hindering your performance, that of your team members, that of your organization? Little bit of an evaluation here. So I need you to participate in a little poll. And have you got the polls, Bob, or have I? We've got some.
Sorry, I'm on mute. Launch the poll. Poll number 1.
Poll number 1, please. Yes.
What? There you go. Launched.
Thank you. So if you could quickly identify, please, where you are. And let's.
What percentage of the time in the day do you spend on email? 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%, or more? Okay, well, we've got scores coming in. Very good. We've got 80%, 85% have voted now.
Excellent.
Yes, 90% have voted. So, okay, we'll close the poll.
Thank you, thank you.
Share results.
Wow.
And there you go.
Okay. So what's the biggest one there then?
20%.
20%
wins. 30% of people have marked down that they spend 20% of their day on emails. That's closely followed by more than 20%, more than 40% is actually listed as 24% of the results.
Right.
So the 2 top scores are more than 40% and 20%. The rest come in at 16 and 19.
That's a chunk of change, people, in terms of time. My question is, why? Why is it that? Now, actually, you're a little bit better than average. I'm going to share with you some survey research in a minute, looking at the average amount of time. So a lot are okay, but as the guru of the guru said, some of you are familiar with Mr. Drucker. He said, just digest that for a second. Now, when I read that in his book, The Effective Executive, back in the 80s as a sales director, that quote offended me. I said, I know where my time's going. I'm a sales director, for crying out loud. And then I did the audit for a week. At the end of the week, I analyzed the data. I did not have a clue, really, in terms of where my time was actually going. The rule in business, people, as you already know, no guessing. Mahan Khalsa, he built a career around that statement. You've read the book, How to Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play, possibly. You know, in terms of no guessing. Now, I asked you to guess, okay, in terms of the amount of time. I'm going to suggest to you, you're actually spending a lot more time in your digital environment than you actually know about. And maybe validate that. If you haven't got a tool and technique to be able to do the time assessment and audit, Bob and I have got some great resources we can share with you. Let Bob know in the chat and we can send that to you. But if you don't know where you are, you won't know what you've got to do to get to where you want to go. So where do you want to go? You want more done, less time, less stress? Well, do some of this stuff. It's really important because the survey research is a little scary. On average, this is average, people are spending 40% of their life doing email. Hello, is that the best use of our time? Look at some of these other things. Now, first thing in the morning, my top tip for you, I'm going to come back to the 40% of the time because that's a real chunk of change. If that's what it actually is, and are you getting the best return on that investment is my question. My first top tip is, and it's a real challenge for some of you, I realize, but my first top tip is this: don't log on. Yeah, you heard. Don't log on. At least for the first hour of the day, if you can, first 2 hours of the day, redirect your brain and your performance into doing your best work, your high value work, rather than busy work, which often email actually is. Now, I know that I get it. Some of you are screaming at me saying, my role is to receive and respond. I get it. If you're a highly reactive person, many of you are not, however, you can take back control. So there's your first challenge. There are 4 shifts that we need to make. Look, it says it right. Mind shift number 1. Email is a tool to enable you to do your job. For example, get that report done, make the sale, build the relationship, manage the business, manage the challenges, solve the problems. Email doesn't do any of that. It's a tool that helps you to do your job. Are we using the appropriate tools? Is the challenge, is the question. So that's mindset shift number 1. It's not your job. And if you're in a team, tell everybody else, it's not their job. Mindset number 2, we got to get control. You don't control it, it will start to control you. And it's not maybe just one inbox, it might be multiple inboxes that you're actually having to look at and control. Often when I coach executives, one of the biggest challenges that they face is they're using the tool inappropriately. And that's not necessarily their fault, they just haven't had the training to be able to deal with inbox. I mean, think about it. How much training have you guys had with regards to using Outlook, as an example? Most of them, none. You give them the tool. Everybody assumes everybody knows how to use the tool. Hello? We're only using about 20% of the capability of all the thousands of inboxes that Bob and I have audited over the years. And using your inbox as a to-do list is very inefficient, very inappropriate. There are other tools, even if it's analog, even if it's pen and paper. You know, I'm big on to-do lists, don't get me wrong. I think they're a great tool in terms of time management, but it's got to be used appropriately, and the inbox is definitely not one of them. 4th one and last one, getting away from just I'm doing email to actually dealing with processing so that we can get on with the real work. So 4 big shifts. This is our agenda during the next few minutes. Going to share with you the business case. Firstly, why get to 0? And it's not so much about frantically managing the inbox down to 0, although that is a fantastic number, but it's also how do we sustain that? And so I want to spend a lot of time here in this brief moments with you, looking at setting in the protocols, the habits, the processes to be able to stay in there, because it's a lot easier to keep up than it is to catch up. But if you don't have these systems set up, firstly, which is fairly getting to 0 is relatively easy. And I'll walk you through the 4 steps of how to be able to do that. And we've got a Q&A, and then there is some support afterwards, as you know. And we've got some special offers as well. If you want to stay with us for the rest of the time and do the survey, and we've got a special bonus offer for you and your team if you want to bring this sort of training in-house. But anyway, all of the benefit of all of this session is going to be around about time. Time to redirect our attention onto the things that truly add value, the things that matter most. I love my colleague and friend and mentor of years, Stephen Covey, and he said, the greatest things in life are not things. It's people. It's that connection that we have. And we've got an opportunity during this pandemic to press reset and look at the systems and processes so that we can spend more time on doing other stuff. So that's the key benefit. I want you to be wise. Some of you have been on some of my programs previously, and the definition of wisdom that I use is wisdom is knowledge correctly applied. It's not what you know. It's what you do with what you know that makes the difference. So literally, if you pick up one idea, and I'm going to ask you at the end of the webinar how many ideas you've actually picked up, hopefully you'll pick up a few more. A lot of this stuff is not rocket science, as my mate Albert would say, but it's about common sense and common practices and habits. Have we got the systems and the protocols in place that are helping rather than hindering our performance and our productivity? Hopefully you've got some device to be able to capture your ideas down. Again, not necessarily note down what I say, but more importantly, what you think as a result of what has been said. Capture that thought. And then more important than the note taking, the writing the idea down, answer these questions. So in my particular situation, what can I do right here, right now? And looking at that application, that transition from the classroom, as it were, the webinar environment into your real world. Okay, so that's the take-home message. I want you to be wise. Okay, knowledge correctly applied. You've got a free chat in one of the bonuses and the other things that we're going to send to you. So stay with us during the next few minutes and do the survey, and we can continue the conversation. So what's the business case for Y0 in the first place? Well, there's an awful lot of research, and I can share with you lots of academic papers to be able to say it really helps productivity and performance and brain power and your well-being psychologically. It can make so much of a difference. Anyway, let's have a look at the baseline for me, which is Benjamin Franklin. Some of you are familiar with the great statesman Benjamin Franklin. He said, time is money. Okay. Now, money isn't everything. Okay, I get it. It's up there with oxygen. All right. But listen, as we think about time, you can always make more money. You'll never make more time. A couple of fallacies about time. One is we think we're going to get more of it. We have all there is. The other fallacy about time is we think we can save it somehow. And we get these apps, this technology, this latest shiny gadget tool. This is going to help me save time. Tell me, where would you put the saved time? No, the only thing you can do with time is invest it. And my question is, are you getting the best ROI, the best return on the investment? Spending 20% of your life in your emails? Really? Is that the best return on the investment? Question. Audit. We need to understand. So time is more important than money. In fact, this was illustrated many years ago at a seminar at about 120 delegates. I didn't know I wished I could have found out who'd written it in. They'd handed in a little postcard. On it, they'd posted this question. Now, I don't know whether you've seen that before. I hadn't seen it many years ago. How do kids spell love? And then PTO turned it over and the delegate had written T-I-M-E. And think about it, ladies and gentlemen. Isn't that true? You parents, you grandparents. It really is. Time. Quality time. And if it doesn't translate in the business world to money for you, definitely time that you can redirect. For example, one of the other programs that I like running, and we have a lot of call for, is teams coming together and looking at email etiquette, setting up the systems and processes at the team level to be able to get things done. Harvard Business School taught a lot of these tools and techniques to a particular organization. They did the research, and when the senior leadership team, the C-suite, when they were trained several months later, they analyzed the email traffic had dropped by, as you can see, a lot, 54%. They then trained all the staff. 6 months later, another reduction in email traffic, up to 63%. That equated to over thousands and thousands of man hours. Nearly $250,000 in terms of man hour time, as it were, could be redirected in their business. Now, if you're online right now and you're saying, well, I'm in a charity, it's not going to equate in terms of money for me, but definitely time, you'll have that rich benefit. So you can redirect in terms of connecting with clients, customers, doing more sales, whatever it is the real work. So the business case is compounded with when we look at the information overload, the addiction, the distractions that it's having on our brain. For example, from King's College London, this was an interesting study, some of you may be familiar with this, smoking marijuana versus digital addiction. Hello? I think, we need to look at that. Now, you know, this is important, particularly in periods of high stress. And aren't we all experiencing some stress right now in terms of the pandemic, the isolation? and it's releasing cortisol. That's the hormone, the stress hormone that flows through your system, which is not good for our brains. Needs to be balanced out with dopamine and serotonin and those natural chemicals that can help us deal with it. And getting back to zero, guess what? Get a rich hit of dopamine, and serotonin helps us keep a healthy brain, keeps us well performed. So looking at this amount of time on our platforms. So one of the things that you need to be aware of is that the best use of our time, firstly, if that is the average for you or for your team or for others. So looking at whatever platform that you're actually using, and I would suggest part of the problem is, are we asking that question often enough? Am I getting the best ROI from this time? One of the big challenges that I typically find when I coach executives is their default settings. And often the default setting, and you answer this for yourself, is that as soon as you open up Outlook or whatever platform you're actually using, it defaults into your inbox. And then you get into inbox. And how long do you stay in the inbox? Long time, maybe too long for some of us. And tell me, have you been reactive or have you been proactive? Well, by definition, you've been reactive. Is that the best return on investment? So the first tip here is to set up the system so that it defaults into your calendar rather than your inbox. Now, some of you are saying, well, how do you default that? How do you change the setting? Well, I've got my friend and colleague, Audrey Thomas, and she's got some great video tutorials. I can send you the links here. Because my system is a Mac and it's slightly different, I thought I'd let Audrey and hopefully Bob, this will come through here as we show Audrey telling us how to just preset this in the system. So
here's how to adjust your Outlook settings so that when Outlook opens, you are immediately taken to your calendar instead of your inbox.
Jim, the videos and audio is not coming through particularly loud.
Oh, is it not?
No. You might need to talk over it and explain what she's saying.
Backstage view, click on the word options. Sorry, the sound isn't coming through for some of you. Go down the menu as you can see. Click on the advanced button. Then go, as you can see, Outlook start and exit. Start Outlook in the folder. Click on the browse button. Go down to calendar. Press OK. Then press OK again. And then forever and a day, when you go to open up your Outlook, it will go default into the calendar first rather than the inbox. Again, if you didn't capture that, we'll send you the link and be able to self-teach. But again, only about 20% of the capability of Outlook or whatever systems that you're using. We can self-teach ourselves some of these techniques, but that one really does make a difference. It's a game changer for many people in terms of getting out of that mindset of diving into inbox. Now, let's have a look in terms of dealing with the amount of emails. Got another poll. Bob, if you could do the poll for us, please. It's percentage of emails you receive. Excellent team.
As we speak.
Thank you very much, Bob.
What percentage of emails that you receive each day that you view as useless or unnecessary? 10%, 20%, 30%, or 40%? Scores are coming in. We've had about 59% of our audience score so far. 76% have scored, 80%. Creeping up, 85%. Oh, that's exciting. Yes, 87% have scored.
What we got? What's the scores?
I know you just can't wait to hear the
Come on.
scores. So I will end the polling and share the results.
Okay.
There we go.
Wow.
30% wins.
30%.
Yeah,
Right.
37% of
Thank
people
you.
scored
Thank you.
that.
Thank you, Bob. You can close that one down.
Okay.
30%. My question is why? Why are you allowing 30% of that volume into your life, into your inboxes in the first place? So you need to audit, you know, why am I having this situation? So a lot of us need to unsubscribe on some of this stuff, or at least if it's unnecessary, if it's coming internally, go and send an email, or at least talk to the person and say, don't send this is useless. I don't need this in my inbox. Yeah. So start to set up some systems and protocols. If it's taking that much, which is a wedge of time again, and you can save yourself a whole lot of grief and others by doing this. Now, for you, particularly in leadership and management, this is the key question for you. On the screen, please ask yourself this question. Useless or unnecessary? What's it like being on the receiving end of your emails? Leaders, managers, are they really value add? Are they really fit for purpose? So rhetorical question here, but understand you can save yourself, your team, your inboxes an awful lot of grief by just starting to do a little bit of common sense evaluation. Again, from our email etiquette, some of the rules here, the golden rule here is emails. So if you want to receive less, then you can read the screen, all right? With the proliferation of tools, Merlin Mann, he made some very good statement. You can read this on the screen. So it's all about releasing our potential, our creativity, our problem solving, our brain power and time to redirect ourselves into the things that matter most, the things that can make a real difference. Yeah, it's not about frantically trying to manage your inbox down to zero at all, but if you've got the systems and protocols in place, you can do that fairly easy. I'll show you how to do that. In fact, there's one technique, in 30 seconds, you can get a zero inbox like that, okay? So help is at hand. It's a bit desperate, but it can be done. Next poll, Bob, please, if you would.
Next poll, launching.
How many emails have you got currently in your inbox? And hopefully you've got it switched in offline mode, but if you haven't, then just look down at the left-hand corner. How many emails have you got in your inbox? If you don't know, have a guess.
You mean read or unread?
Total.
Total, wow, okay. Interesting question.
How
We
many
have
total emails?
73% of the results coming in, 76.
Okay. Give it another
82, 84, 86, 89. 89% have voted.
Excellent. Let's have it, Bob. Scores on the doors, please.
Showing the results. Here we go.
Oh, wow. 627. Oh, we got a joint score. Oh, that's interesting. Joint score. Is that right, Bob? Am I reading that correctly? 27%? 11 to 50?
Tied. We've got a tied score.
Got a tie. Okay. All right. Now, some of you need to figure out. Now, for those of you got 0 to 10, well done. Fantastic. Okay. And how do you do that? Let us know, as I'd be interested in your systems and protocols that you've set up, see if they're any different than mine and my wonderful colleague Graham Alcott, who a lot of these ideas I've built on over the years. But thinking about the volume can create stress. So thanks for that. Let's come back to some of these. You've heard of the 80-20 rule. Many of you, Pareto's principle. Well, think about if you've got 800 emails, only about 20% of them add any value. 800 to 20 rule. So think about all emails are not of equal value. We've kind of just demonstrated that previously. Useless and unnecessary. Understand the fact that the systems and the protocols that we get set up are underpinning our success. If you've read James Clear, he puts a good business case together. Lovely quote from Jim here. He says this. So are our systems. My wife has a mantra, have a place for everything and everything in its place. Don't put it down, put it away. Think about that. My wife actually ought to be training you here today, because she is so fastidious in terms of everything in its place, a place for everything and everything in its place. And she can find things in a nanosecond that typically takes me a lot longer, okay? So, but think about it, these systems and processes can really help us. So how do you stay at 0? Okay, so let's quickly have a look. For those of you who haven't seen an inbox with nothing in it, there you go. And yes, it can be achieved, okay? Some of you who sat with 600 plus emails, you can eliminate that out of your life. And I tell you, psychologically, looking at that screen as opposed to 600 does something to your brain. So let's have a look. First and foremost, do not default into thinking that email is everything. It isn't. How many of you have played this game? You've played email, table tennis, ping pong, backwards and forwards, trying to get clarity. And then all of a sudden you pick up the phone, talk to the person, and then within a matter of a minute or two, oh, yeah, is that what you meant? Oh, yeah, great. Okay. And moved on. I'm sure we've all had that. So don't default often. And my colleague, Richard, next week is going to talk about communication tools in terms of effective team communication. So think about, is this the appropriate way to respond? Don't default into email. Often the best one is pick up the phone. The other one is CC. Setting up the systems in terms of CC, and worse still, BCC. When I go into train organizations and look at the trends and patterns within the business, I look at the email traffic and find out why is CC happening? Well, often it's this CYA, it's a cover our anatomy type of situation, and too much heavy duty CC. Issues of trust, I would suggest, at organizational, managerial, and leadership levels. One manager I coach had a brilliant idea. Let me share it with you. What he did, he set up a rule that anything came CC didn't stop in the inbox. It was rerouted automatically into the CC file. CC stands for carbon copy back in the day, yeah? I don't need to do anything. I'm not being actioned. I just need to be aware of it, as it were. So how do you set up the rules? Well, firstly, if you go into, this is a Microsoft screen here, screen grab for you, go into file, go into the account information, go on the rules and alerts, and go into that section, and automatically the rules wizard opens up, and you can set all sorts of rules up. One of the key rules I would encourage you all to set up is reroute all of your CC stuff into a CC file. Save yourself an awful lot of pain and grief. 3 areas that we need to address in terms of our inbox. First and foremost, the inbox is just the place where email lands waiting to be dealt with. And there are 2 other parts of the system that you need to have set up: your referencing folders and your processing folders. So I hear you say, what's all that about then, Jim? So referencing folders are the files down the left-hand side of the screen that you've set up that you need to drag stuff into. Think big buckets rather than folders and then subfolders and then subfolders. That will drive you nuts. And particularly with the search engine capabilities these days, you don't need all of those. You just need a big bucket. So for example, as you can see highlighted over onto the left of the screen here, there's a variety of folders that this individual has set up. Now yours are going to be slightly different, obviously, but you need to dedicate a period of time to think through, well, what would work logically for me? Last one at the bottom there is Z, or Z, as my American colleagues would say, underscore, and then archive. It's a bit of a catch-all, and if you're really an overcautious individual, you don't want to press delete, you want to archive it, just drag it into there, and that's a bit of a catch-all. And once you've set up your referencing folders, your big buckets, email processing in the inbox becomes a heck of a lot easier, particularly if you've already set up your processing folders, which are, mentioned the Z one already, at action, at reading, and at waiting. And as you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, these come automatically if you put the @ sign in front of the word straight up to the top of the list. So at action. So what does that mean? At reading and at waiting. Well, let me share with you. So at action, as you're going through the inbox and you look at the email and you say, can I do that now? Can I action it? And if you can do it within 2 minutes, because that's you know, the great David Allen's quote in terms of GTD, getting things done. If you can do it in under 2 minutes, do it. Get it out of the way. Delete. Move on. Okay. If it's going to take a little bit longer than that, in terms of time, then it gets dragged into the at action folder. You've got stuff that's in your inbox and you think, oh, there's a PDF there. I need to read that and digest it. I don't have time now. I'll drag it into my at reading folder. That's where all your digital reading. Then the last one is at waiting, where you've delegated a task and you're waiting on some information to come back into somebody, or somebody's emailed you, I'll get that to you. Bob says, I'll get that to you by Friday. And I don't want to make sure that, I want to remember that, make sure it doesn't slip through the net. So I drag that out of the inbox and goes into the at waiting. And then periodically during the day, I will access one or more of these folders in terms of the discretionary time. Just, oh yeah, Bob is going to get that information by Friday. And then on Thursday afternoon, when I look at that Friday, oh yeah, Bob's going to get that to me. And then Friday, obviously, Bob comes through. If he doesn't, he gets a rocket in the proverbial. But anyway, no, I'm sure he wouldn't. Anyway, so decision time in terms of the inbox. And there are 6 Ds that we need to always remember. The first one is delete, get it out of the way. Or if you're a really cautious individual, archive it. If you can do it in 2 minutes, get it done, delete the email, cleared inbox. This is my timing. Yours might be slightly differently. If it's going to take me more than 3 to 15 minutes, it goes in the action file. If it's more than 15 minutes worth, then I drag that email into the calendar. The screen automatically pops up, in Outlook at least. It automatically creates a meeting whereby that goes into the diary. And then it's going to take me 30 minutes or 45 minutes or whatever, a chunk of time to be able to deal with the body of that. And that's all populated in the email. And then I can do 1 or 2 things. I can either delete it or archive it. Okay. So into the calendar, delegating, I already mentioned that, putting it the at waiting, and then if you're deferring it, you're going to do something with it, read it later, etc. That goes in your at reading. So the 6 Ds: decision, decision, decision. Automatically be ruthless with the inbox. So I would suggest that we need to go offline here regularly and purposefully. And great, the magic, the day job, the things that matter most, getting things done, email is just a tool. It is not your job. Okay, we've already said that. But at least 3 times a day, and you need to decide when those 3 times might be for you. They're different for me. Typically, it's around about 10 o'clock, and then about 1 o'clock, and then about 4 or 5 o'clock for me. 3 times a day, and then the rest of the time, I'm offline. And you switch it on, you're out of office, and you get on with the real work. Don't constantly 24/7 be plugged in. Now I get it, again, if your job role is to be reactive. Some of you can't do that. Many of you can. What is your system, your protocol? 3 times a day, process back, dial it back down to 0, move on, get things done. So once you do the time audit, you can start to find out, well, how much of my life is actually being spent in terms of doing the email, and reduce that over time for yourself and maybe for the team as well. So a little bit of a challenge there for you, real change of habit for some. So think about that on the daily basis, and on the other opportunity you have. Don't have a lot of time here to be able to expand on the weekly planning or the weekly review, but this is absolutely critical to be able to stay on top of all of your emails, your inbox. First port of call, when you're in your weekly planning session, you're meeting with yourself, which hopefully you have ring fenced, dedicated, isolated from the world, and you're answering the question, what am I about? What am I about this week particularly? What is my key goals that I'm going to focus in on this week. Then you dial back the system, looking at the inbox, looking at your systems, your processes, paperwork, calendar, updates, etc. That's why you dial it all down in your typically hour-long meeting with yourself. As if you don't have that in your diary, it's just a wish, okay? And then you think back, think ahead, what went well, what didn't, what's coming up, what do I need to plan for? And then the last part is about scheduling. As again, my colleague and mentor, Stephen Covey, says, schedule the big rocks. You see, the main thing is to keep the main thing, the main thing. Think about it. And you can only do that through proper planning and prioritization. So, got some thoughts and ideas for you there. So how do you then get to zero, which I say really is relatively the easy bit. Now, just before I share with you that, a little bit of a promo about next week, you can read on the screen, Richard's going to share with you some wonderful, practical, pivotal, profitable ideas about team communication. So share that. If you haven't already signed up, I really encourage you to do so and tell others about this. We'd really like to get a community around. We will be sending an email on the back of this to invite you to a private LinkedIn group where there's all sorts of other tools and resources available for us as a community to be able to help and support and share each other. So there's enough of that. Now, how do you get to zero? Well, the system comes in a few stages, 4 stages in actual fact. First one, setup. That's the stuff that I've talked about, where you've diarized at least 90 minutes, might need a little bit more actually the first time, but think through, this meeting with yourself, dedicated ring fence, where you're setting up the system. So you're setting up all of those referencing folders, processing folders, you're synthesizing and slimming down the system and really thinking through what is going to work for me. And keep it simple. Keep it simple. KISS, you're familiar with that one. Keep it short and simple. And so the first one is have that meeting with yourself. Then hacking. So you've got 600 emails in your inbox, let's say. So you want to be able to quickly and effectively hack your way through these 600 so you can get to zero. Okay, so how do you do that? Well, there's a couple of ways we'll share with you. Multiple hacking, typically first one, quick win is do it by date. Going emails over the last 6 months, guess what? Select all, delete. Because if you haven't needed it in 6 months, the probability is you ain't gonna use it or anything like that. Or at least if you're really overly cautious, you don't want to press delete, then just put it in the archive. All right, get it out of your inbox. That's the critical thing. Then once you've bulk hacked your way through, you're down to about 10 or 20 emails. There's a couple of key questions that you need to look at and then just process those one by one until ultimate nirvana. Here I am at peace. I have zero in my inbox. So let's just quickly go through those. Again, be ruthless here. I would encourage you when you do this exercise, stand up. You are 3 times more assertive, stronger on your feet than you are sat down. So stand up and it will be more efficient and absolutely more effective here for you. Okay, so letting go of stuff first. All right, so do it by date. So looking at you can do it by subject and you can do it by person. So as a screen grab here, you can see on the screen here where we look at selection from, subject, size, from, to, and then automatically your system will then select that batch of emails and then you decide, am I going to just delete this lot or put it into an email file, email death row. It's kind of another way of saying archive, if you will. But anything in the last 3 months, 6 months, whatever, just drag that lot into there. And then maybe make a calendar item for yourself, a reminder, review your email death row folder in 6 months' time. Again, if you haven't accessed it, just delete, get rid of the stuff. Make the delete button your friend, I would suggest. And it will make your life so much easier. Okay, a couple of other things that you need to decide. Do I put it in one of the other referencing in the library or one of the action folders, processing folders? Okay, so there we go. So once you've done the mass of the hundreds of emails, you're then typically going to go one by one. So ask yourself a couple of key questions. Is it still alive? If it is not, then delete or file, as you can see. And then if it is, if it's still alive, if it's still active, then you need to get it out of inbox into one of your processing folders. And then appropriately, on a daily, on a weekly basis, you'll be accessing these processing folders and dealing with that work, rather than it just sat in the inbox being a major distraction to you. And if you're really, really desperate, you've got thousands. I mean, there was one delegate, this one lady has the world's record. She had 47,552 emails in her inbox. And that was just one of them. At the end of the 3.5 hours of coaching, she was in tears. She had nearly a zero inbox and she was in tears of joy, of the relief that the psychological weight that was lifted from her shoulders, her brain. It was just so, if you're in this space, if you're really desperate, you could do this. You could select all of the emails, press delete, panic a bit, and then send this email to everybody else. There you go, have a read of that. And guess what? You'll get about 10 or 12 back, and then you can deal with them appropriately. Again, not to be recommended, a little bit of fun really, but if you're at a cliff edge, maybe it's desperado time. Okay, so getting to zero, relatively the easy piece. Setting yourself up for success and then continuing that, the execution of that day in, day out, week in, week out, making it a system and a habit is where the gold really is. Okay, so hopefully, ladies and gentlemen, you've got some ahas. You've got some takeaways. You've got some light bulb moments from today's session. I've got a question for you. Poll, Bob, I think we got the last poll here, please. Could you please share with us? Do you want to talk us through that one, Bob, again? Or
ideas gained from the webinar that you are going to use? How many? 1, 2 to 4, 6, 5 or 6, 7 or more.
Fantastic, Bob. Thank you for your help, by the way, today. It's been invaluable, as always. I'm really looking forward to Richard's next week. That's a key skill, team communication.
We've got questions coming in on the chat already. I think we're going to have a good time on the Q&A.
Good. Okay, excellent. We're nearly
82% have now answered.
Okay, great.
And you got, see if it goes up any more. No, it seems to have stabilized 82%. So here is the result.
Okay, excellent. Between 2 and 4. Super job. So we got one individual, Bob, who's got 7 or more. We need to find out. Do you already know, Bob, who that individual is?
I know. I can't tell from the poll. It's anonymous.
Oh, okay. All right. Whoever got the 7 or more, please tell Bob, because I want to send you a bonus prize, and I want to find out what they were as well. So thank you for that. Appreciate that. So everybody's got some wonderful ideas. Thank you, Bob, for your help there. So let's have a look. My question is, so what are you going to do about it? When are you going to use what you've learned? You see, again, ladies and gentlemen, it's not what we know, it's what you do with what you know that's going to make the difference. So when are you going to implement that? If you don't do it within the next 24 hours, probability is it won't. Now, don't try to reinvent everything about your systems and your processes. And the old adage, Rome wasn't built in a day. just think about what's the one aha that I can immediately find benefit from, and then build on that going forward over the next week, the next month, or whatever it might be. So congratulations, I commend you in terms of your commitments. I thank you for your time and energy. If you respond to the survey, we'll give you the opportunity to reconnect with Bob and myself and the team in terms of a coaching a video chat or whatever you like to set that up as. And we can go a little bit deeper and wider in terms of supporting you going forward. Also, as a thank you from Graham Alcott, great little ebook we'll send out to you, builds on some of the concepts that we've just shared with you here today. How to get your inbox into zero, and what else have I got? Yes, this special offer. If you want to bring this sort of training into your organization, then this virtual training now that we have created, you can save yourself a wedge of money. And as you can see, up to 8 delegates. So let Bob and the team know, and either of the 3 courses there on offer. So it's a wonderful bonus. Thank you for attending, your time, your energy. And we're now open for questions, Bob.
Jolly good. Well, one of the questions that came in, if you could please put your questions in the Q&A, that'd be very helpful, because I'm searching back through the chat now to try and find the question was there. Have you ever tried clear context? Was a question from Elliot.
Clear context. Now I'm going to make a guess that that's an app or some sort of technological tool. Am I right in that assumption, please?
I don't know. Elliot might be able to tell us if he's still with us. I'll keep an eye on the chat and see if it answers. In the meantime, we have another question, which is why delete as opposed to marking things as read and managing by what is unread?
Okay, the ideal here is to eliminate the distraction. If it's still there subliminally, the tendency is in the back of the brain that it's something that's still not necessarily been dealt with. If you have processed it properly through the 6 Ds again, then why would you need to keep it? Now, if you're being overly cautious and you think, oh, just in case, get it out of the inbox again, get it into the archive file, the Z_archive at the bottom of the list, rather than clogging up the inbox and, more importantly, parts of your brain.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Elliot has said that correct, clear context is an Outlook add-in, and so will help in that regard.
In fairness, I'm not familiar with that at all, and so I wouldn't have a view on that. But let me check that one out. Thank you. Who was that gave us that, Bob?
Elliot.
Elliot. Thank you, Elliot.
Okay. We have another question in, which is, when you were talking about putting folders together, would you put them as specific project folders?
Again, I'm not going to be prescriptive. Just keep it. The rule is keep it simple. If you've got a big bucket, a meaty project, then often I have a meaty project folder, and that's part of the referencing system on the left-hand side of the screen. Just have a place for everything, and everything in its place is the mantra. Unless, Bob, have you got a view on that? Because I know that you're ultra organized.
Yeah, I mean, there's a big debate about the number of folders. We have actually got a question in from Bradley about Manage Your Now, which is Michael Lindenberger, who advocates only one folder. And I've struggled with just having one folder. I've preferred your ideas with having, action, read, wait, and the archive. It's been easier for me. And I too, if I've got a very chunky project, would have something specific for that. That particular project. So Manage Your Now is a very good system by Michael Lindenberger. I find it very helpful with scheduling. We have another question. Any tips on a role where handling sales inquiries where they come in a lot by email? So I'm tending to check my emails often to ensure we meet the service level agreement of a 45 response time. But of course, that means I'm easily distracted by visiting the inbox so often.
Right. Now, Bob, just so as you know, Jazz is just telling us when you turn your head, the mic's not picking up your voice as well. So.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. There's me thought I was being clever using 2 screens.
Well, it would work if you had your headset on, but
yeah, technical problems today. Sorry. So,
yeah.
any tips on a role where handling a sales inquiry, where they come in by email, is such that I've got to visit my inbox every 45 minutes?
Okay, so it's a more of a reactive role then, by the sounds. That again, you've got to use a bit of common sense here. Well, there's a number of ways of if the system that you're currently using works for you, don't reinvent the wheel. Is my first port of call. If, however, based on what I've said, do you think, yeah, there might be a streamline, there might be more efficiency in terms of creating a folder and then taking it out of the inbox and put it into sales inquiry folder, then do that, and then the habit becomes every 45 minutes, half hour, or whatever the KPI is that you have with yourself or your boss, that you interrogate that and have dealt with it, I suppose. Bob, have you got a view?
I think it is about having the amount of time that's allocated to these things like service level agreements. It's like the old adage about answering the phone call within 3 rings. Actually, the research from BT was that people didn't start hanging up until about 7-8 seconds, rather than 3 rings. But we create some problems in the business. So sometimes having a sales at inbox, which means training people to use a more generic inbox, and then having different people take responsibility for that inbox at different times during the day. So particularly for those that are more reactive, it's about having at least an hour a day away from that reactive part of their job so that they can get something bigger done. Somewhere between an hour and 2.5 hours a day. And it may well be for Clayton, who asked the question, that's not always as easy. Sorry, it wasn't Clayton that asked the question. I'm getting myself confused. Cameron, who asked the question. But I think we've got to find a balance between being reactive and being proactive, and everybody is entitled to some proactive time away from the noise of email and the noise of the phone. So it's about getting it organised as a team. We have another question in, from Clayton. I have a folder for each of my customers that I look after. All emails are filed in their own folder when I've dealt with them, so they all go in there. I presume that I should just have one now, question mark.
I think you've answered it yourself.
What do you mean, Jim? Be a little bit more, because he's worried about their repeat customers and he's often dealing with them weekly and daily and
okay, well, again, the 80-20 rule would kick in there. 80% of the value will come from 20% of the customers. I know they're all equal, don't at me. But the reality of life is there'll be a key 20%. I know some salespeople have their key 20% customers as folders, and they guard them and protect them with their life. They have backups on everything. And then the rest go into the also ran customer file. So that's again, I'm not going to be prescriptive on that. Bob, have you got a view?
I think it's about, just think of how often have you had to go back and find something in one of those folders, because it's this access of data rather than just covering our backside that is an interesting test. And I used to have a folder for every client and every project. And there was a question that was raised by somebody at BMW, and I had to, for the first time in 2 years, open up an archive folder and try and retrieve the data. And that's happened once that I've had to go back into things. So I got into the habit of archiving emails every 6 months automatically. The Outlook does it, and I've
you can set up a rule, guys. If you haven't got the rules set up already, set up the rules. Make it automatic for yourself.
Auto archive. It runs every week. It takes everything that's 6 months older away, and I found I was never ever looking in these complex, large number of folders I have. So now I just have much less. So just, and it's only covering our backsides really with these archive folders in the main.
Yeah.
Can you put individual customer folders under process so your screen doesn't show them unless you expand them? Interesting question. Can you put individual folders under process so your doesn't always? Yeah, you can. You can put your customer folders inside a senior folder and then shut the senior folder so nothing else shows. Yeah, you can definitely do that. My question would still be, how often are you accessing it? Because you're spending time and effort and energy creating a system that you never often access.
And the color code my diary, Tim says, for self-meetings. Wonderful that you're having self-meetings. Firstly, color coding, even double bonus, and communicating that to others, because that's that critical time period where you can dial back everything, making sure everything for the following week is in its place and you're on top of things. Excellent. Anything else, Bob?
Well, I think it's 1 minute past 12. So as much as there's more to crack on with, I would say that Tim Andrews, bless him, has said dyslexia rules KO. So sometimes he's quite right. We do overcomplicate the systems for ourselves, those that are dyslexic or not. We struggle with it.
Thank you again, team.
Up, Jim?
Thank you. Just keep it simple. If you want any help and assistance, get in contact with us and be more effective.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.